Living in the end is essential for those who seek to bring their deepest desires into reality. To live in the end is to live your life based on the assumption that you have already achieved your goal. This isn't mere positive thinking or visualization. It is a complete acceptance and emotional realization of having your desire fulfilled, not in the future, but now. It involves thinking, feeling, and acting, as if the desired state is already a fact, despite any evidence to the contrary. The foundation of this concept is the understanding that consciousness is the only reality. Everything you perceive, including the physical world, is a reflection of your own consciousness. Therefore, by altering your consciousness, you can alter your reality. When you adopt the state of the wish fulfilled, your consciousness begins to transform the world around you to reflect your inner state. Now let us turn to the practical application of this sublime truth. Here, I will outline the steps you can take to embody and actualize the principle of living in the end. These steps are not mere exercises. They are profound acts of faith and creation. By following them, you engage in the divine act of bringing the unseen into the seen, the unmanifest into the manifest. The first step is to clarify your desire, precisely define what it is you wish to manifest. Vague desires yield vague outcomes, so it's crucial to be specific. The second step is to craft an imaginal act. Develop a scene that implies the completion of your desire. This scene should be concise and filled with sensory details and emotional substance. Hear the sounds, touch the textures, and feel the emotions associated with fulfillment. The third step is to use emotional engagement. As you visualize, it's vital to engage emotionally as though your desire is currently your reality. The emotional resonance reinforces the reality of the scene in your consciousness. The fourth step is repetition. Regularly immerse yourself in your imaginal act. Do this especially before sleep, as the subconscious mind is most impressionable at this time. The fifth step is to maintain the feeling. Carry the feeling of the wish fulfilled into your daily life. It's not about denying current reality, but imposing your chosen reality upon it until it becomes your living truth. And the sixth step is to persist against doubt. Persistence in maintaining your assumed state is critical, despite the presence of doubt or contradictory evidence from the external world. This is where faith comes into play, acting as the bridge over which your imaginal acts make their way into reality. So, you must live from your desired state. An essential aspect of this practice is to think and act from the state of having achieved your goal, rather than working towards something absent. This shift significantly changes how opportunities and pathways unfold before you. Consider this example of living in the end. Imagine someone who desires a new career. Instead of merely wishing for it, they begin to embody the confidence and satisfaction of having that career now. They align their actions with this state, engage in networking and skill enhancement, as if the role is already theirs, and speak with the assuredness of someone well placed in their field. Now, what's the role of faith? Faith is not just religious. It is a loyalty to unseen reality. It is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. In practicing the law, your faith, your loyalty to the unseen assumption will be tested. But remember, it is the faith and persistence that bridge our current state with the realization of our desires. In closing, living in the end is not a passive state. It is active and dynamic, requiring imagination, faith, and persistence. This practice invites us to step into our desired reality, fully and confidently, thereby transforming our lives from the inside out. Remember, your imagination is powerful. It is the creative force that molds the fabric of reality. Let us use it with wisdom and joy to create lives we desire. If this content made sense to you, don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And remember, this is just the beginning. Subscribe to the channel to continue receiving content like this, which will help you grow, evolve, and achieve the life you deserve. Leave your comment below telling us how you plan to put this into practice, and let's build a community focused on prosperity and transformation together.
From scarcity to abundance. When you appreciate what you have, you open the door for more. The confidence of someone who has already made it. The world bends to those who move with certainty. The first step to winning is believing you already have.
Dear friends, I'm going to ask you to do something that might feel impossible right now. I want you to imagine that every financial struggle you've ever had was based on a complete misunderstanding, a cosmic joke, a magic trick where you've been staring at the magician's left hand while the real secret was happening in plain sight. What if I told you that lack doesn't exist in the universe, that it's never existed, that every moment of poverty you've experienced was like being thirsty while standing in the ocean? Stay with me, because this isn't going to be another lecture about positive thinking or gratitude. This is about revealing the fundamental structure of reality itself. Let me share something with you that changed everything for me. I was studying the nature of reality, truly studying it, not just philosophizing, and I discovered something extraordinary. In the entire universe, there is no such thing as nothing. Even what we call empty space isn't empty. It's teeming with potential energy, with invisible fields that physicists are only beginning to understand. The vacuum of space contains more energy than all the matter in the visible universe combined. Think about that. The emptiness contains everything. So if nature abhors a vacuum, if emptiness itself is actually fullness, what does that tell you about lack? It tells you that lack is a perceptual error, a misreading of reality, a belief imposed on abundance. Let me explain this through a lens you might not expect: mathematics. When you have infinity and you subtract 1,000,000 from it, what do you have left? Infinity. When you subtract 1,000,000,000, infinity. When you subtract everything you can possibly imagine, still infinity. You cannot diminish infinity. It's mathematically impossible. Now here's what most people miss. Consciousness itself is infinite. I'm not speaking poetically. I mean this literally. Your awareness right now has no boundaries. Close your eyes and try to find the edge of your consciousness. You can't. It extends infinitely. And if consciousness is infinite, and all creation exists within consciousness, then the idea of lack is like trying to have half of infinity. It's nonsensical. It cannot exist. Yet you've spent your whole life believing in it. You've been doing impossible mathematics, trying to divide infinity into enough and not enough. Here's what actually happens when you experience lack. You're not experiencing the absence of abundance. You're experiencing your attention focused on absence. Let me give you an example. Right now, as you're listening to my voice, there are thousands of sounds you're not hearing. Your refrigerator humming, traffic outside, your own breathing, the blood rushing through your ears. Are those sounds absent? No, they're present. You're just not attending to them. The moment I direct your attention to them, they appear in your awareness. They were always there. You were just focused elsewhere. Lack works the same way. When you focus on what you don't have, you create the experience of lack. Not because things are actually absent, but because your attention has narrowed to exclude everything else. It's like standing in a room full of treasure, staring at the one empty corner and declaring there's nothing here. The treasure doesn't disappear because you're not looking at it. But in your experience, it might as well not exist. This is the optical illusion. You think you're observing reality, but you're actually creating your experience through selective attention. Let me prove to you right now that you're surrounded by abundance even if you can't see it yet. Take a breath, a deep one. Did you pay for that air? Did you earn the right to breathe? Did you have to prove yourself worthy of oxygen? No. It was freely given, infinitely available. You've probably taken 500 million breaths in your life without once worrying, what if I run out of air? That's abundance. That's how the universe actually operates. Now you might say, but Neville, I can't pay my rent with air. True, but you're missing the principle. The same creative power that provides air without you asking also provides everything else. The same source, the same intelligence, the same infinite abundance. The only difference is your belief about it. You trust that air will be there, so you don't hoard it. You don't wake up anxious about oxygen supply. You just breathe. But with money, you don't trust. You grip, you worry, you hoard, you believe it's scarce. And that belief, not the actual availability of money, creates your experience of lack. So if lack doesn't exist in reality, where does it exist? In assumption, in belief. In the stories you tell yourself. I discovered this through direct experience. Years ago, I was completely broke. I mean truly destitute. And I was convinced that my poverty was caused by external circumstances, the economy, my lack of connections, my bad luck. But then I started to experiment with consciousness. I began to assume I was wealthy even though every physical fact contradicted it. And here's what I noticed. The moment I assumed wealth, I stopped experiencing lack even before a single dollar appeared. The anxiety vanished. The desperation evaporated. The constant mental calculations about what I could or couldn't afford, gone. Why? Because lack isn't about dollars. It's about a state of consciousness. When you're in the state of lack, you could have $1 million and still feel poor. You'd worry about losing it. You'd calculate how long it would last. You'd still experience scarcity. But when you're in the state of abundance, you can have very little money and feel completely wealthy. You'd trust. You'd be at ease. You'd know more is coming. The state is the experience. The money is just a symbol. Now, let me give you something radical, a practice that cuts through all the complexity. For the next 24 hours, I want you to operate under one assumption: I live in an abundant universe and I lack nothing. Not I'm trying to manifest abundance. Not I hope to be wealthy someday. But I lack nothing right now. Here's how you practice this. When a bill arrives, instead of how will I pay this, say the money for this already exists. I'm just letting it find me. When you want something, instead of I can't afford it, say this or something better is already mine in consciousness. When you see someone with wealth, instead of envy, say their abundance is proof that abundance exists. And what exists for one exists for all. Notice what happens. I'm not saying your bank account will instantly fill, though it might. I'm saying your experience will shift. You'll feel lighter, freer, more creative, more open. And that shift in experience is the shift in consciousness. And consciousness is the only cause. Here's something that will blow your mind. The reason most people don't receive abundance is because they're constantly broadcasting I don't have. Think about it. When you worry about money, you're saying I don't have enough. When you check prices anxiously, you're saying I don't have enough. When you feel stressed about bills, you're saying I don't have enough. You're like a radio station broadcasting on the frequency of lack 24/7. And the universe, which is just consciousness reflecting back to you, responds. You're right, you don't have enough. Not because there isn't enough, but because you've claimed lack as your identity. Now here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing it, stop desperately wanting it, stop broadcasting lack, it comes. Why? Because you've changed frequencies. You've moved from I don't have to I am, and I am is the name of God. It's the creative power itself. It's pure abundance. When you rest in I am, not I am trying or I am hoping, but simply I am, you're in alignment with the source of all abundance. And what you're aligned with, you receive. Let me tell you the real secret that no one talks about. Abundance isn't something you get. It's something you are. You are not a human being trying to attract abundance. You are abundance itself, temporarily convinced you're not. It's like a wave on the ocean thinking it's separate from water, or a branch thinking it's separate from the tree. You can't be separate from abundance because abundance is your source. It's what you're made of. Every atom in your body was forged in the heart of a star. You are literally made of stardust. the most abundant substance in the universe. Every thought you think comes from infinite intelligence. Every breath you take comes from infinite life. Every moment you exist, you're sustained by infinite power. How then could you possibly lack anything? The lack you experience isn't because you're separated from abundance. It's because you believe you are. And the moment you stop believing the lie, you wake up to what's always been true. You are not in abundance. You are abundance. So how do you live as abundance when your bank account says otherwise? You start acting from abundance instead of toward it. Here's what I mean. A person acting toward abundance says, when I get money, I'll be generous. A person acting from abundance says, I'm generous now even with little, because generosity is who I am. A person acting toward abundance says, I need to save every penny. A person acting from abundance says, I manage my resources wisely and trust more is always coming. A person acting toward abundance says, I can't do what I want until I'm rich. A person acting from abundance says, I make rich decisions now within my means. Do you see the shift? You're not waiting to be abundant. You're being abundant now with whatever you have. And this isn't pretending. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is recognizing that abundance is a consciousness, not a circumstance. Here's the final truth I want to leave you with. Lack was never your problem. Your problem was believing in lack. The universe has never held back from you. You held back from the universe. Abundance has always been here, infinite and available. You just learned to look at the one empty corner instead of the treasure-filled room. But now you know. Now you see, lack is a lie. Not because I said so, but because reality itself proves it. Moment by moment, breath by breath, you are here. You are alive. You are consciousness experiencing itself. And consciousness is infinite, eternal, and abundant. So stop trying to get abundance. You already are it. Stop trying to manifest wealth. You already contain it. Stop waiting for the universe to give you permission. You are the universe expressing as you. Claim it, own it, be it. Not tomorrow, not when conditions change. Now. Because lack is a lie and you are the truth. My friend, I'm not sharing this with you to motivate you or inspire you. I'm sharing it to wake you up. You've been asleep in the dream of lack, and it's time to wake up. Look around you. Really look. The abundance is everywhere. You are swimming in abundance, calling yourself thirsty. So here's what you're going to do. Stop rehearsing lack. Stop talking about what you don't have. Stop agreeing with poverty when it knocks on your door. Start being the abundance you seek. Start acting from fullness. Start living as though the universe is rigged in your favor, because it is. And watch what happens. Watch how fast your world transforms when you stop believing the lie. Lack is a lie. You are abundance. Live accordingly. Thank you, and good evening. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of consciousness. Remember, you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul is ready for this truth. Take these teachings and let them transform not just your mind, but your entire reality. Until we meet again in consciousness, keep assuming your greatness and living from the end of your desires. This is Best of Lectures, and I'll see you in the next video. Good evening, my friends. Tonight I'm going to share something with you that might sound unfair. In fact, it is unfair. Wildly, gloriously, magnificently unfair. And I'm not going to apologize for it. Because once you understand what I'm about to tell you, once you grasp the power you actually possess, you'll realize that those who know this secret are playing an entirely different game than everyone else. You have an unfair advantage. And tonight I'm going to show you how to use it. I'm talking about your imagination. Your ability to assume a reality that doesn't yet exist in the physical world, and through that assumption alone, bend your entire financial reality to match it. Let me tell you what most people do with money. They look at their current financial situation, the bank account, the salary, the bills, the debt, and they accept it as reality. They call it being realistic. They call it facing facts. And from that acceptance of limitation, they try to improve their situation. They work harder, they save more, they cut expenses, they hustle, they grind, they sacrifice. And maybe if they're lucky, if the economy cooperates, if their boss is generous, if nothing unexpected happens, maybe they improve their situation by 5%, 10% if they're really fortunate. This is the game everyone plays, the game of incremental improvement from a foundation of lack. But you don't have to play that game, because you have imagination. And imagination is the most unfair advantage that has ever existed. With your imagination, you don't improve your financial reality by 5%. You don't gradually climb from where you are to where you want to be. You simply assume you're already there, and reality bends to match your assumption. Not gradually, suddenly, completely. Inevitably. This isn't theory. This isn't philosophy. This is the most practical thing I've ever taught. Because while everyone else is grinding away at their limitations, you're going to use your imagination to dissolve those limitations entirely. Here's what makes this unfair. Two people can start with the exact same financial situation, same income, same debt, same circumstances. One person accepts their situation as reality and works within its limitations. The other person refuses to accept it, assumes wealth in imagination, and lets reality reorganize itself. 3 months later, they're living in completely different financial worlds. Not because of luck, not because of privilege, not because of external opportunity, because one person knew the secret and the other didn't. Is that fair? Absolutely not. The person who discovered oil on their property didn't work harder than their neighbor. The person who invented something valuable wasn't more deserving than someone else. The person who received an unexpected inheritance wasn't morally superior. They simply aligned with wealth in consciousness, and wealth found them. And now you're going to learn how to do the same thing, deliberately, consciously, powerfully. Here's the truth that very few people understand. Your financial reality is not fixed. It's not solid. It's not determined by external forces. Your financial reality is fluid. It's consciousness made visible. And consciousness can be changed instantly. The physical world, the bank accounts, the bills, the paychecks, these are effects. They're shadows cast by consciousness. And when you change consciousness, the shadows must change. Most people try to change the shadows directly. They push against their circumstances. They fight their limitations. They try to rearrange the effects. But you're not going to do that. You're going to change the consciousness that's casting the shadow. And when you do, the entire financial picture must reorganize itself to match. This is unfair because it means you don't have to work harder than everyone else to have more than everyone else. You just have to assume differently. There was a woman who came to one of my lectures. She had exactly $300 to her name. Rent was due in 2 weeks. She needed at least $1,200. She told me she'd been thinking about how to stretch the $300, how to borrow the rest, how to explain to her landlord that she'd be late. I stopped her. You're thinking from lack. I said, you're trying to manipulate the shadow. Instead, use your imagination to change the light. She didn't understand at first. So I made it simple. Tonight I said, don't think about the $300. Don't worry about the $1,200 you need. Instead, imagine you're holding your rent receipt. It's paid. You feel relief. You feel secure. You're not trying to figure out how it happened. You're simply experiencing the fact that it happened. Live in that reality in your imagination. She agreed to try. For 5 days, she did nothing but imagine her rent was paid. She felt it. She experienced it. She lived in that assumption. She didn't know how. She didn't plan when. She just assumed it was done. On the 6th day, a former client called her. A project she'd worked on a year ago had been relicensed, and she was owed royalties she didn't even know were coming. The check arrived the next day. Exactly $1,200. Her rent was paid. Her imagination bent reality to match her assumption. And here's the unfair part. She didn't work any harder than someone else who might have struggled for months to earn that money. She simply used her imagination. I want you to understand something crucial. Your imagination is not a toy. It's not a pleasant pastime. It's not just daydreaming. Your imagination is the most powerful creative force in your life. It's how you bend reality. It's your unfair advantage in a world where most people don't even know the game they're playing. When you imagine something and assume it's real, you're not wishing, you're not hoping, you're not pretending. You're creating, you're commanding. You're bending the very fabric of your financial reality to match your assumption. Most people use their imagination against themselves. They imagine worst-case scenarios. They picture themselves failing. They assume lack, struggle, limitation, and reality obeys. It bends to match those dark imaginings. But you're going to do the opposite. You're going to use your imagination as it was meant to be used, as a weapon of creation, a tool of transformation, an instrument of financial freedom. Here's what I want you to do. And if you do this faithfully, your financial reality will bend so dramatically that people will ask you what happened, and you won't even know how to explain it to them. Tonight before you sleep, close your eyes and imagine a scene that implies you are financially free. Don't imagine the money itself. Imagine what having the money would allow you to experience. Maybe you imagine receiving a bank statement that shows abundance. Maybe you imagine a friend congratulating you on your financial success. Maybe you imagine yourself making a purchase you've always wanted without any concern about the cost. Whatever scene you choose, make it real. Feel it, hear the sounds, see the colors, experience the emotions. Make it so vivid that for those few moments before sleep, it's not imagination, it's memory. And here's the key: fall asleep in that scene. Let it be the last thing your conscious mind experiences before sleep takes you, because sleep is the doorway. In sleep, your assumption sinks deep into your subconscious mind, where it has the power to reorganize your entire reality. Do this every single night, not as a technique you're trying, as a reality you're living in imagination until it becomes your reality in physical form. I knew a businessman whose company was failing. He was weeks away from bankruptcy. His employees didn't know, his family didn't know, but he knew, and the weight of it was crushing him. He came to me in desperation. I've tried everything. I've worked 18-hour days. I've cut costs everywhere. I've pursued every possible client. Nothing works. The money just isn't there. Good, I said. He looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. Good? Yes, good. Because now you've exhausted all the usual methods. Now you're ready to use the unfair method. I taught him what I'm teaching you. Assume success in imagination. Live in it. Breathe it. Be it. Not as a future goal, but as a present fact. Every night he imagined his business thriving. He heard employees celebrating. He felt the satisfaction of abundance. He saw the numbers that proved success. He didn't know how this could happen. His logical mind said it was impossible, but he did it anyway because he had nothing left to lose. Within 6 weeks, everything changed. A competitor made an unexpected offer to partner with him. A product he'd shelved years ago suddenly found a market. A client he'd written off came back with a massive contract. His business didn't just survive, it exploded. Within a year, he tripled his previous revenue. Was it fair? No. He didn't work 3 times harder. He didn't suddenly become 3 times smarter. He simply used his imagination to bend his financial reality. And reality bent. You know what's interesting? Most people, even when they hear about this, won't use it. They'll nod along. They'll think it sounds nice, but they won't actually do it. And do you know why? Because deep down, they don't believe they have this power. They don't believe their imagination can actually bend reality. They think it's too good to be true, too easy, too unfair. And so they go back to the hard way, the realistic way, the way that keeps them struggling for inches when they could be leaping miles. But not you. You're different. Because you're still here, still listening, still wanting to understand. You sense the truth in this. You recognize that there's something here that could change everything. So let me ask you directly. Are you willing to use an unfair advantage? Are you willing to bend your financial reality through imagination while others grind away at their circumstances? Are you willing to assume wealth so completely that the universe has no choice but to deliver it? If your answer is yes, then listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. This isn't complicated, but it is specific. And the specificity matters. First, identify your financial desire. Not in vague terms like more money, but in specific feelings. How would you feel if your finances were exactly as you wanted them? Relief? Security? Freedom? Joy? Identify that feeling. Second, create a simple scene that implies that feeling. Don't make it elaborate. Simple is better. Maybe you're checking your bank account and smiling. Maybe you're telling someone money is no longer a concern for me. Maybe you're making a purchase you've wanted without hesitation. One simple scene that implies your financial freedom. Third, every night, before sleep, live in that scene, not as fantasy, not as wishful thinking, as experience. Feel it real. Make it so vivid that you forget you're imagining it. For those few moments, you're not in your current financial reality. You're in the reality you're creating. Fourth, fall asleep in that feeling. This is crucial. Don't imagine the scene and then return to worry about your bills. Imagine the scene and drift into sleep while still feeling its reality. Let that assumption be the seed planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious. Fifth, let it go during the day. Don't obsess about when or how it will manifest. You've planted the seed. Trust it's growing. Live your day from the assumption that it's already done, even if the physical evidence hasn't caught up yet. Do this faithfully for at least 30 days. Not half-heartedly. Not occasionally. Faithfully. Every single night. And watch as your financial reality begins to bend. I've seen this work thousands of times. I've watched people go from poverty to prosperity, from debt to wealth, from financial chaos to financial peace, not through hard work alone, not through lucky breaks, through the deliberate use of imagination to bend their financial reality. If you use this unfair advantage, if you assume wealth in your imagination with the same faith that you currently assume limitation, your financial world will transform. Not because you deserve it more than others, not because you're special, but because you understood the law and applied it. This is your unfair advantage. While others accept their financial limitations as reality, you recognize them as shadows that can be changed by changing the light of consciousness. While others work harder within their limitations, you use imagination to dissolve those limitations entirely. While others hope and wish and wait, you assume and persist and manifest. I want to end with this thought. Life is not the game you thought it was. You thought the game was about working hard, saving money, making smart investments, and hoping for the best. But that's not the game. That's just what people who don't know the rules are doing. The real game is this. Consciousness creates reality. And whoever masters their consciousness masters their reality. Your financial situation is not determined by the economy, by your education, by your background, by your current circumstances. Your financial situation is determined by your assumptions in consciousness. Change your assumptions and you bend your financial reality. This is the most unfair advantage that exists. And now you know it. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Thank you, and good evening. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of consciousness. Remember, you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul is ready for this truth. Take these teachings and let them transform not just your mind, but your entire reality. Until we meet again in consciousness, keep assuming your greatness and living from the end of your desires. This is Best of Lectures, and I'll see you in the next video. Good evening, my dear friends. Tonight I want to talk to you about something that will bring an end to all your striving, all your effort, all your exhausting attempts to make your life work. I want to talk to you about the difference between trying to attract what you want and simply being what you want. Because there is a vast difference, an infinite difference, and understanding this difference will change everything. You see, most people are exhausted. They are tired from all the techniques, all the methods, all the endless trying. They affirm and nothing changes. They visualize and nothing shifts. They repeat mantras, they make vision boards, they hold on to hope with white knuckles, and still the life they desire remains just out of reach. And they wonder what they're doing wrong. They wonder why it works for others but not for them. They wonder if they're broken somehow, if they're missing some secret ingredient, if they're just not good enough at this. But I'm here to tell you tonight, you're not doing anything wrong. You're simply operating from the wrong premise. You've been taught that you must attract your desires, that you must pull them toward you from somewhere out there, that you must work and strive and align yourself just right, so that the universe will finally give you what you want. But that's not how it works. That's not how it has ever worked. The truth is far simpler and far more radical than that. You are not here to attract anything. You are here to express what you already are in consciousness. You are not here to become something you are not. You are here to claim what you already are and live from that claim. This is not the law of attraction. This is the law of assumption. An assumption is not about trying. Assumption is about being. Let me explain what I mean. When Christ walked this earth, he did not try to heal people. He did not hope they would get better. He did not perform rituals or techniques or emotional management to make it happen. He simply spoke from a state of consciousness where healing was already done. He said, "Rise and walk," not as a request, not as a wish, but as a statement of what was already true in consciousness. He was not trying to change reality. He was expressing reality from a different state of being. This is what I mean by assumption. Assumption is not pretending. Assumption is not lying to yourself. Assumption is occupying a state of consciousness where what you desire is already true, already real, already done. And when you occupy that state, when you live from that state, reality has no choice but to conform to it. Not because you worked hard, not because you did everything right, but because consciousness is the only reality, and whatever you are conscious of being must externalize in your world. Now, most people hear this, and they immediately start trying to assume. They start trying to feel the feeling. They start trying to believe it's already done. And this is where they go wrong, because the moment you try to assume, you've already admitted in consciousness that you are not what you're trying to be. The very act of trying proves that you're still in the state of lack, still in the state of wanting, still in the state of separation from your desire. Real assumption is not effort. Real assumption is rest. It is the quiet, calm certainty that what you desire is already yours in consciousness. It is the feeling of relief that comes when the search is over. It is the peace that settles in when you realize there is nothing left to get, nothing left to become, nothing left to prove. You are already it, right now, in consciousness. And consciousness is the only reality there is. I remember a time in my own life when I desperately wanted something to change. My circumstances were difficult. My situation seemed impossible. And I did what most people do. I tried to visualize my way out. I tried to affirm my way into something better. I tried to think positively and stay aligned and do all the right things. And the more I tried, the more exhausted I became. Because trying is resistance. Trying is the admission that you don't already have what you want. Then one night, I simply stopped. I stopped trying. I stopped visualizing. I stopped affirming. I stopped doing anything at all. And instead, I just felt what it would feel like if what I desired were already mine, not in the future. Now, I didn't imagine it happening. I experienced it as already having happened. I felt the relief of it, the peace of it, the absolute normalcy of it. And in that moment, something shifted, not in my circumstances, in me. I stopped being someone who wanted something. I became someone who already had it. And that shift in consciousness, that shift from wanting to having, that was the only shift that mattered. Within days, I kid you not, within days my outer world began to rearrange itself. Opportunities appeared that hadn't existed before. Doors opened that I didn't even know were there. People showed up at exactly the right time. And none of it felt forced or magical or even surprising. It felt natural. It felt inevitable. Because I had stopped trying to make something happen and started living from the state where it had already happened. This is what I want you to understand tonight. You are not here to attract your desires. You are here to assume them. An assumption is not a technique. It is a state of being. It is who you decide to be in consciousness right now. Regardless of what your senses are telling you. Regardless of what your circumstances look like. Regardless of what other people think or say or believe. When you assume something, you are not hoping it will come true. You are declaring it true in consciousness. And consciousness, being the only creative power there is, must harden that declaration into fact. This is law, not theory, not philosophy. Law, the same law that governs the rising of the sun and the turning of the seasons. Consciousness creates. And whatever you are conscious of being, you will experience in your world. But here's the key that most people miss. You cannot assume something while still feeling the lack of it. You cannot claim to be wealthy while feeling poor. You cannot claim to be loved while bracing for rejection. You cannot claim to be successful while rehearsing failure in your mind. The subconscious doesn't hear your words. It hears your state. It feels your inner conviction. And if your inner conviction is still rooted in lack, in separation, in not yetness, then that is what will continue to manifest in your world. This is why so many people fail at manifestation. They're saying one thing with their words but feeling another thing in their being. They're affirming abundance while feeling unworthy. They're visualizing love while expecting disappointment. They're imagining success while preparing for failure. And the preparation, not the proclamation, is what the subconscious accepts as true. So how do you change this? How do you move from trying to attract into simply being? You stop all the techniques. You stop all the methods. You stop all the endless doing. And you ask yourself one simple question. Who am I being right now in consciousness? Not what am I thinking? Not what am I hoping for? Who am I being? Am I being someone who is waiting for their desire to arrive? Or am I being someone who already has it? If you are being someone who is waiting, then you will continue to wait. If you are being someone who is trying, then you will continue to try. But if you are being someone who already has, who already is, who already lives from the fulfilled state of your desire, then that is what must appear in your world, not eventually. Now, in consciousness first, and in form soon after. I knew a woman who was desperate to change her financial situation. She was in debt. She was struggling. Every day was a battle just to make ends meet. And she tried everything. She did the gratitude journals. She did the vision boards. She repeated affirmations until her voice was hoarse, and nothing changed. In fact, things seemed to get worse. So I asked her, when you do all these techniques, who are you being? She looked at me confused. I'm being someone who wants to be financially free, she said. Exactly. I told her, you're being someone who wants, someone who lacks, someone who is not yet what they desire to be. And as long as that is your state, as long as that is who you are being in consciousness, you will continue to experience lack, because you are not trying to attract abundance. You are expressing lack. And consciousness always expresses what it is, not what it hopes to become. She didn't understand at first. So I gave her a different instruction. Tonight I said, I want you to forget about money. I want you to forget about your debt. I want you to forget about trying to manifest anything. Instead, I just want you to feel what it would feel like if you were already financially free. Not imagine it. Feel it. Feel the relief of not worrying about bills. Feel the peace of having enough. Feel the casual confidence of someone for whom money is not an issue. And don't do this as a technique. Do this as an experiment in being. Just be that person for a few minutes before you fall asleep. Be financially free in consciousness and see how it feels. She agreed to try it. And that night she stopped trying to attract money and started being someone who already had it. She felt the relief. She felt the peace. She felt the absolute normalcy of financial freedom. and she fell asleep in that state, not hoping for a change, but resting in a new identity. Within weeks, opportunities began to appear. A relative offered her a job she hadn't known was available. An old debt was unexpectedly forgiven. Money came from sources she never could have predicted. Not because she attracted it, because she finally matched it in consciousness. This is the secret. You do not get what you want, you get what you are. And what you are is determined not by your circumstances, not by your past, not by what others think of you, but by what you are conscious of being right now in this moment. If you are conscious of being poor, you will be poor. If you are conscious of being unloved, you will be unloved. But if you are conscious of being abundant, of being cherished, of being successful, then that is what you will experience. Not because the world gives you what you want, because the world reflects what you are. So tonight, I want you to stop trying to attract anything. Stop trying to manifest. Stop trying to make things happen. Instead, I want you to ask yourself, what would I be feeling right now if my desire were already fulfilled? Not excited, not hopeful, just settled, just at peace, just relieved that the search is over and what I wanted is now mine. And then I want you to rest in that feeling, not as a technique, not as a tool, but as your new state of being, as who you are now in consciousness. Don't think about how it will happen. Don't plan the steps. Don't monitor the progress. Just be. Be the person who already has what you desire. Be the person who already is what you want to become. And live from that state. Walk from that state. Think from that state. Make decisions from that state. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, just faithfully. And when you notice yourself slipping back into the old state of wanting and trying and hoping, you don't condemn yourself. You simply return. You return to the feeling of already having. You return to the state of being. You return to rest. This is what Scripture means when it says the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not a day. The Sabbath is a state of consciousness. It is the rest that comes from knowing the work is already done. When you assume your desire fulfilled, when you claim it as already yours in consciousness, the work is finished. There is nothing left to do. Now you simply rest in that assumption, rest in that state, and watch as the outer world rearranges itself to match your inner conviction. But you must persist. You must remain faithful to your assumption. Your senses will tell you it's not true. Your circumstances will seem to contradict you. Other people will doubt you, and that's fine. Let them. Because you are not living by their consciousness. You are living by yours. And your consciousness, when it is rooted in the assumption of the wish fulfilled, is the only thing that matters. The outer world is simply a delayed reflection of your inner state. It shows you who you were, not who you are becoming. So ignore the reflection for now, and stay faithful to the new state. Stay faithful to the assumption. Stay faithful to the feeling of already being what you desire to be. If you do this, if you persist in this, I promise you your world must change. It has no choice. Consciousness is law, and law does not fail. When you change what you are conscious of being, you change what must appear in your world, not through force, through faith. Faith is not hoping things will work out. Faith is the calm certainty that in consciousness it is already done. And what is done in consciousness must eventually appear in form. This is why Christ said it is finished. Not it will be finished. It is finished. In consciousness, the work is always already complete. The only question is, are you resting in that completion, or are you still trying to make it happen? If you're still trying, you're still in the state of lack. But if you're resting, if you're at peace, if you've accepted in consciousness that your desire is already yours, then you are living from the fulfilled state. And living from the fulfilled state is the only thing that manifests fulfillment. So let go of trying. Let go of attracting. Let go of all the exhausting effort to make your life work. Instead, simply decide who you are going to be in consciousness, not who you want to become, who you are, right now. In this moment, are you wealthy? Are you loved? Are you healthy? Are you free? Then claim it. Feel it. Live from it. Not as a future possibility, but as a present reality, and remain faithful to that reality in consciousness, no matter what the outer world shows you, because the outer world will catch up. It always does. But it can only catch up to what you are being in consciousness. So be deliberately, be consciously, be faithfully, and watch as your wonderful human imagination, that divine creative power within you, hardens your assumption into fact and brings your inner world into outer manifestation. You are not here to attract a better life. You are here to express a truer self, and the truer self you have is the one you claim right now in consciousness. So claim boldly, claim clearly, claim completely, and let reality, faithful and exact, reflect back to you the state you have assumed as your own. Thank you, and good evening. This is Best of Lectures. I will see you in the next video. Good evening, my dear friends. Tonight I am going to tell you something that may shock you. Something that contradicts almost everything you've been taught about manifestation. Stop manifesting. Stop trying to manifest. Stop working to manifest. Stop struggling to bring your desires into being. Because the very act of trying to manifest is the energy that keeps your desires at a distance. I can see the confusion on your faces. But Neville, you're thinking, isn't that why we're here? To learn how to manifest, to bring our desires into reality. And that is precisely the problem. As long as you are trying to manifest something, as long as you believe you must bring it into reality, you are affirming that it is not already real. You are declaring with every effort that you do not have it. And consciousness can only create from the state you occupy. Tonight I will show you what you should be doing instead of manifesting. And I promise you, when you understand this distinction, when you grasp this subtle but profound shift, everything will change. Let me explain what is wrong with the entire concept of manifesting as most people understand it. When you say, I am manifesting money, what are you actually declaring? You are saying that money exists somewhere outside of you, and you must use certain techniques to pull it toward you, to make it appear in your reality. When you say, I am manifesting love, you are affirming that love is absent from your life, and you must do something to create it or attract it. When you say, I am manifesting healing, you are confirming that you are currently sick, and you must manifest health. Do you see the problem? The very language of manifestation keeps you in the state of not having. It keeps you in the position of seeking rather than possessing. It keeps you focused on the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And consciousness creates from where you are, not from where you want to be. If you are in the state of trying to manifest, consciousness creates more of that state, more trying, more seeking, more not having. This is why people can spend years trying to manifest the same desires. They visualize, they affirm, they do technique after technique. But nothing changes, because they are approaching it from the wrong state of consciousness. They are trying to manifest instead of being the manifestation. So if you should stop trying to manifest, what should you do instead? The answer is simple, powerful, and completely different. Assume. Do not try to manifest wealth. Assume you are wealthy. Do not try to manifest love. Assume you are loved. Do not try to manifest success. Assume you are successful. This is not a subtle distinction. This is a complete reversal of the entire approach. Manifesting is an action you take to create something. Assuming is a state you occupy because it is already created. Manifesting implies distance between you and your desire. Assuming collapses that distance entirely. Manifesting is effort. Assuming is rest. Think about something you already have in your life. Something so natural and normal that you never think about it. Perhaps your ability to read, your name, the fact that you live where you live. Do you try to manifest these things? Do you use techniques to bring them into reality? No. You simply assume they are yours. You take them for granted. They are so much a part of your accepted reality that you never question them. This is the state you must bring to your desires. Not the energy of trying to manifest them, but the peaceful assumption that they are already yours. Now let me explain why assumption is so much more powerful than trying to manifest. When you assume something is true, you think from it rather than about it. You no longer stand outside your desire looking at it, trying to bring it to you. You stand inside your desire looking out at the world from that position. A person who is trying to manifest money thinks about money constantly. They focus on it, visualize it, work techniques to attract it. But they are always thinking about money, which means they are separate from it. A person who assumes wealth thinks from wealth. They make decisions from the consciousness of having money. They speak from abundance. They move through their day with the ease that comes from financial security. They are not thinking about wealth. They are thinking from wealth. This shift from thinking about to thinking from is the difference between years of effort with no results and instant manifestation. Let me share something with you. When I teach people to assume their desires are fulfilled, they often protest, "But Neville, I don't feel wealthy. I don't feel loved. I don't feel successful. How can I assume something I don't feel?" And I tell them the feeling follows the assumption, not the other way around. You do not wait to feel wealthy before you assume wealth. You assume wealth, and the feeling of wealth naturally follows. This is because assumption is a mental position, and feeling is the natural result of that position. When you truly assume something, when you take it as your starting point, the corresponding feeling must arise. But most people try to generate the feeling first, hoping that will manifest the thing. This is backwards. Assume first, occupy the state. The feeling will follow, and the manifestation will follow the feeling. So how do you actually do this? How do you stop manifesting and start assuming? You must make a fundamental shift in your self-concept. You must stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to get something and start seeing yourself as someone who already has it. Every morning when you wake up, before you do anything else, ask yourself, who am I today? And the answer must be, I am the person who already has my desire. Not I am working toward it. Not I am manifesting it. But I am it. I have it. It is already mine. Then you must live your entire day from this assumption. Every decision you make it from the consciousness of already having. Every word you speak it from the position of possession. Every thought you think it from the state of fulfillment. This is not pretending. This is not fake it till you make it. This is occupying a state of consciousness and refusing to vacate that state regardless of what your senses report. Your senses will tell you that you do not have your desire. They will present evidence. They will remind you of your current circumstances. But you must remain loyal to your assumption, not to your senses. The senses report the past. Your assumption creates the future. If you let the senses dictate your assumption, you will continue creating more of the same past. But if you maintain your assumption despite the senses, you will create a new future. I remember teaching this to a woman who had been trying to manifest a specific house for over a year. She had done every technique. She had visualized, affirmed, created vision boards. Nothing had worked. I said to her, stop trying to manifest the house. Assume you already live in it. But I don't live in it, she protested. How can I assume something that isn't true? It is true in consciousness, I replied. And consciousness is the only reality that matters. The physical world is simply consciousness made visible. Change your consciousness, and the physical must follow. I taught her to stop all techniques, all efforts to manifest. Instead, she was to live in the assumption that she already owned and lived in the house. When she thought about home, she thought of that house. When she made decisions, she made them as someone who lived there. When she imagined her future, she saw herself in that house as a simple, natural fact. Within 6 weeks, a series of unexpected circumstances made the house available to her at a price she could afford. But notice, she did not manifest it through effort. She assumed it, and reality conformed to her assumption. Here is something beautiful that happens when you stop trying to manifest and start assuming. You finally rest. Manifesting is exhausting. It requires constant effort, constant vigilance, constant doing. You must visualize every day. You must affirm. You must do techniques. You must monitor your thoughts. You must check for signs. It is a full-time job of trying to bring something into being. But assumption is rest. When you truly assume something is already yours, you can relax. You can stop striving. You can cease all the frantic doing. Think about it. If you truly owned a beautiful home, would you spend your days visualizing it, affirming it, trying to manifest it? No. You would simply live in it. You would take it for granted as a natural part of your life. This is the rest I speak of. The rest that comes from accepting your desire as already fulfilled in consciousness. This does not mean you become passive or stop taking action in the world. It means your actions come from the state of already having, not from the desperate need to make something happen. Actions that come from assumption are inspired, natural, effortless. They feel right. They energize you. They align with your desire because they flow from the consciousness of already possessing it. But actions that come from trying to manifest are forced, anxious, desperate. They drain you. They push against reality rather than flowing with it. Let me give you the ultimate test to know whether you are assuming or merely trying to manifest. When you think about your desire, does it feel natural or does it feel like something you are trying to create? If it feels natural, ordinary, simple, a given fact of your life, then you are assuming. If it feels exciting, important, something you are working toward, then you are still in the state of manifesting, of trying to bring it to you. The goal is naturalness, the feeling of course I have this, the sense that it would be strange not to have it. When you reach this state of naturalness about your desire, manifestation is no longer a question. It is not a matter of if, but simply a matter of time for the physical world to catch up with the reality already established in consciousness. A man came to me who wanted a particular job. He had been trying to manifest it for months. He visualized the interview, the offer letter, the celebration, but nothing happened. I asked him, when you imagine having this job, how does it feel? He said, it feels exciting, it feels amazing, like all my dreams coming true. There is your problem, I told him. You are still in the state of wanting it, of being excited about getting it. You need to reach the state where having this job feels completely normal, natural, expected. I taught him to imagine not the moment of getting the job, but a moment 6 months after having the job. An ordinary Tuesday at work. Nothing special. Just him doing his job, it being completely normal. When he could feel that naturalness. When the job felt as ordinary as his current situation, that is when it manifested. Within 2 weeks, he had the offer. Now you may be wondering, if I stop trying to manifest, what happens to all the techniques I have learned? The visualization, the affirmations, the scripting, the gratitude practices. Here is the truth. Techniques are tools to help you occupy a state. They are not the goal. They are the means. If visualization helps you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, then use it. But use it to enter the state, not to create the manifestation. Once you have assumed the state, once you feel the naturalness of having, you can stop the technique. If affirmations help you maintain your assumption throughout the day, then use them. But understand that you are not using them to manifest. You are using them to remind yourself of what you have already assumed to be true. The technique is the ladder. The assumption is the roof. Once you have climbed to the roof, you no longer need the ladder. Do not spend your life on the ladder, climbing up and down. Stand on the roof. Live in the state. Many people become addicted to techniques. They feel they must visualize every day or their desire will not manifest. They feel they must affirm constantly or they will lose their manifestation. This is still the consciousness of manifesting, of trying to make something happen. When you assume, you can let go of the techniques. You can rest in the knowledge that it is already done in consciousness, and consciousness is the only reality that creates. Let me share with you the ultimate secret. The truth that underlies everything I teach. You are not manifesting anything. You have never manifested anything, and you will never manifest anything. Manifestation implies creating something new. bringing something into existence that was not there before. But this is impossible. Everything already exists. All possibilities, all outcomes, all realities exist right now in consciousness. You are not creating. You are selecting. You are not manifesting. You are assuming. When you assume a state, you are not bringing that state into existence. You are selecting which already existing state you will experience. You are choosing which channel to tune into, which reality to occupy. The wealthy version of you already exists. The loved version of you already exists. The successful, healthy, fulfilled version of you already exists. Right now in consciousness. Your job is not to create this version. Your job is to assume it, to occupy it, to be it. And when you occupy a state fully, when you assume it completely, the physical world must reflect that state, because the physical world is simply consciousness made visible. This is why I tell you to stop manifesting, because manifesting implies effort to create. But you are not creating. You are simply choosing which of the infinite already created possibilities you will experience. Tonight I want you to make a shift. A simple shift that will change everything. Stop trying to manifest your desires. Stop doing techniques to bring them to you. Stop working to make them real. Instead, assume they are already real. Assume they are already yours. Assume you already are who you want to be. And then live from that assumption. Think from it, speak from it, feel from it, decide from it. When you wake up tomorrow, do not ask, what can I do today to manifest my desire? Ask instead, who am I today? What is already true about me? And the answer is, I am the person who already has my desire. It is already mine. I already am who I wanted to be. Then go about your day from that state, not seeking, not trying, not manifesting, but being, having, living as the person who already has what they desire. This is not wishful thinking. This is not denial of reality. This is understanding that consciousness is the only reality. And whatever state you assume in consciousness must manifest in experience. Stop manifesting. Start assuming. This is the secret. This is the way. This is the only thing you need to do. Assume your desire is already fulfilled. Occupy that state. Refuse to vacate it. And watch as the entire world rearranges itself to confirm what you have assumed to be true. You are not the manifester. You are the assumer. You are not creating reality. You are selecting which reality to experience by the state you choose to occupy. Choose now. Assume now. Be now who you wish to be. Have now what you wish to have. And rest in the knowledge that in consciousness, where all creation takes place, it is already done. Thank you. And good evening. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of consciousness. Remember, you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul is ready for this truth. Take these teachings and let them transform not just your mind, but your entire reality. Until we meet again in consciousness, keep assuming your greatness and living from the end of your desires. This is Best of Lectures, and I'll see you in the next video.
My friends, I want you to stop what you're doing and imagine something profound with me, right where you sit at this moment. Infinite versions of your life are vibrating just beyond the veil of your present perception. You think you're living one story, but what if I told you that every desire you've ever held, every dream you've dismissed as impossible, already exists as a living reality in what the quantum physicists now call the field of infinite possibility. The mystics knew this truth thousands of years ago, and now science is catching up. Your imagination, that divine faculty within you, is not merely a tool for daydreaming. It is the very mechanism by which worlds collapse from possibility into fact. Stay with me, for what I'm about to share will shatter every limitation you've accepted as real. Look at your life right now. I mean, truly observe it. You are living within what I call a particular state of consciousness. But I promise you, it is not the only state available to you. Around you right now, infinite versions of reality are waiting for you to assume them into existence. Yet here we are, so many of us locked inside our single loops of assumption, living the same patterns, getting the same results, feeling the same frustrations, wondering why nothing ever changes even though we desperately want more. Let me tell you something that will liberate you. You are not stuck because of fate, destiny, or circumstances beyond your control. I've been there myself, my friend. I've walked through the valley of limitation, believing I was at the mercy of external forces. But here's what might shock you, and this is something most people never realize. You're stuck because your entire system, your very consciousness, is still tuned to your old assumptions about who you are and what's possible for you. The quantum field doesn't care about your desires. It only responds to your assumptions. You see, my friend, an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. This is not mere philosophy. This is the fundamental law governing your experience of reality. Every single thing you've ever experienced began as an assumption in consciousness, and the creative principle within you brought it into manifestation because you believed it to be true. I remember when I first understood this principle. I was a young man in Barbados, working in my father's tailoring shop, dreaming of something more, but not knowing how to bridge the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. I would watch the wealthy tourists come through our shop, and I assumed they lived in a different world than mine. But then I began to understand that consciousness was the only reality, and that by changing my assumptions about myself, I could literally change my world. I used to believe, and perhaps you did too, that wanting something intensely enough would bring it into manifestation. I would lie awake at night, burning with desire for a different life, a life of freedom and possibility. But can I share with you the truth that revolutionized everything? Your desire alone accomplishes nothing in the realm of creation. Nothing comes from without. All things come from within, from the subconscious. The creative power responds not to your wanting, but to your assuming. Think about this for a moment. You can desire wealth while assuming poverty. You can long for love while assuming unworthiness. You can dream of success while assuming failure. And which assumption do you think the creative principle will honor? Always the dominant assumption, the one you feel most naturally, most consistently. This is why you might be doing everything right, saying affirmations, creating vision boards, practicing visualizations, yet still finding yourself trapped in the same limited expression of life. Because beneath your conscious efforts, your subconscious assumptions are broadcasting the old story. It's like trying to plant a garden while the soil is still poisoned with the chemicals of your old beliefs. I had a student once who came to me desperate for financial freedom. She would spend hours each day visualizing abundance, but every time she opened her wallet, every time she paid a bill, every time she looked at her bank account, she would contract with fear. She was trying to plant seeds of abundance in soil that was saturated with assumptions of lack. The creative principle couldn't honor her conscious desires because her subconscious assumptions were so much stronger. Now here's where modern quantum physics validates what I've been teaching for decades. And this will astound you. Every possibility that has ever existed or could exist already vibrates within the quantum field simultaneously. You are not creating something from nothing. You are selecting which already existing reality to experience. The quantum physicists call this superposition, all possibilities existing at once, until the moment of observation collapses one specific reality into form. But here's the profound truth that most people miss. You are not observing reality with your physical eyes alone. You are observing, and therefore collapsing, reality with your assumptions, your expectations, your dominant feeling states. The quantum field is responsive, not reactive. It mirrors back to you not what you want, but what you assume to be true about yourself and your world. Man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness. We look at our circumstances and believe they're the cause of our limitations. But circumstances are never causes. They are effects. They are the hardened assumptions of yesterday's consciousness, crystallized into what we call reality. Tesla understood this when he spoke of energy, frequency, and vibration as the secrets of the universe. He wasn't speaking metaphorically, he was describing the literal mechanics by which consciousness creates reality. Your assumptions generate a specific frequency, and that frequency determines which quantum possibility collapses into your lived experience. I remember studying Tesla's work years ago, fascinated by his ability to see inventions in his mind before they existed in the physical world. He would build machines in his imagination, run them, test them, even improve them, all before creating a single physical prototype. Tesla knew that imagination was the workshop of creation, that everything that exists first existed in the realm of consciousness. But most people are trying to manifest from the 5% of consciousness that is awake and aware, while the 95% of their subconscious remains programmed with old assumptions of limitation, fear, and lack. And the quantum field always responds to the dominant signal. It's like trying to tune a radio to a beautiful symphony, while 95% of your receivers are still tuned to static. Modern neuroscience confirms that 95% of our behavior operates from subconscious programming, stored patterns, beliefs, and emotional conditioning that run automatically below conscious awareness. When we combine this with quantum mechanics observer effect, we discover something remarkable. Most of the time, it's not your conscious intention collapsing reality, but your subconscious assumptions. This is why people can change jobs, relationships, cities, and still find themselves experiencing the same emotional patterns and outcomes. Because nothing external has the power to override an internal assumption that remains unchanged. I've seen it countless times. People who move across the country to escape their problems, only to recreate the same problems in their new location. So when people tell me manifestation doesn't work, what they're really saying is, I haven't yet changed the internal observer that's collapsing my reality. They're trying to transform their world from the wrong level of consciousness. Your subconscious mind, that vast storehouse of assumption, is like a radio tower, constantly broadcasting a signal. And the universe, being perfectly responsive, tunes into that signal and manifests circumstances that match its frequency. If your subconscious is broadcasting fear, you'll attract fearful circumstances. If it's broadcasting lack, you'll experience scarcity. If it's broadcasting unworthiness, you'll find yourself in situations that confirm your unworthiness. I once worked with a man who desperately wanted to find love. He would go on dates, join clubs, attend social events, but somehow he always ended up alone. When we explored his subconscious assumptions, we discovered that deep down, he believed he was unlovable. His mother had told him as a child that he was too difficult to love, and that assumption had taken root in his consciousness like a weed. Every time he met someone new, his subconscious assumption of being unlovable would broadcast that frequency, and potential partners would unconsciously pick up on it and pull away. He wasn't consciously sabotaging his relationships. His subconscious assumption was doing it for him. Here's something most teachers of manifestation overlook. Your nervous system is not merely receiving information, it's broadcasting it. Every cell in your body carries and transmits the frequency of your assumptions. When your nervous system is wired for survival, scarcity, and fear, it sends signals of threat to the field, even when your mouth is declaring abundance and success. This is why affirmations often fail. There's an energetic contradiction between what you're saying and what you're assuming at the cellular level. The field responds to the authentic signal, not the performed one. It's like trying to broadcast a love song while your entire being is vibrating with the frequency of fear. You change your future best when you are in control of your thoughts, while in a state akin to sleep. For then effort is reduced to its minimum. In that drowsy state, your conscious mind's resistance dissolves, and you can more easily assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. I discovered this principle through personal experience. In my early days of studying these laws, I would struggle to maintain positive thoughts during my waking hours. My conscious mind would constantly interfere, bringing up doubts and fears and logical arguments against my desires. But in that twilight state between sleeping and waking, I found I could slip into the assumption of my fulfilled desire with ease. It was in this state that I first successfully used my imagination to change my circumstances. I was working as a clerk in New York, earning barely enough to survive, when I decided to assume the feeling of being a successful lecturer. Every night, as I drifted off to sleep, I would imagine myself standing before audiences, sharing these profound truths, feeling the satisfaction of helping others transform their lives. The transformation you seek isn't about fighting your current reality. It's about withdrawing your assumption from it and investing your assumption in the reality you prefer to experience. This is the most important point I can make to you. Resistance to what is only makes what is more real in your experience. When I speak of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, I mean something very specific. You must feel yourself to be the person for whom your desire is already a natural fact. Not someone hoping for it, not someone working toward it, but someone for whom it is simply true. This is what I call living from the end, inhabiting the consciousness of your fulfilled desire so completely that it becomes your natural dwelling place. If you desire financial freedom, you must assume the feeling of being financially free. How does a financially free person move through the world? How do they breathe? How do they make decisions? How do they relate to money? You must inhabit that consciousness so completely that it becomes your natural state of being. But here's the part that trips up most students. You cannot assume intermittently and expect consistent results. Your assumption, to be effective, cannot be a single isolated act. It must be a maintained attitude of the wish fulfilled. Most people approach manifestation like tourists visiting a foreign country. They pop in briefly, take some pictures, then return to their familiar homeland of limitation. I remember a woman who attended my lectures in Los Angeles. She was struggling with debt and desperately wanted to experience financial abundance. She would come to my meetings, get inspired, go home, and practice the techniques for a few days, then gradually slip back into her old patterns of worry and scarcity thinking. One evening, she approached me after a lecture and said, "Neville, I've been practicing your techniques for months, but nothing has changed. What am I doing wrong?" I asked her to describe her practice, and she told me about her sporadic efforts, her moments of inspiration followed by days of doubt. I said to her, "My dear, you're visiting the state of abundance like a tourist. You check in for a brief stay, then check out and return to your familiar hotel of limitation. The quantum field doesn't respond to your occasional visits to your desired state. It reshapes itself around the state you inhabit most consistently." This is why sporadic visualization sessions produce sporadic results, while sustained assumption produces inevitable manifestation. You must take up permanent residence in the state of your fulfilled desire. This doesn't mean forcing yourself to feel good all the time, or denying challenges when they arise. It means developing the capacity to return again and again to your assumed state, regardless of external circumstances. When the old patterns arise, and they will, you don't fight them. You simply return to your assumption, with the gentle persistence of a river flowing toward the sea. Every time you notice yourself slipping back into the old assumption, and gently redirect yourself to the new one, you're literally rewiring your quantum signature. You're teaching the field a new pattern to mirror back to you. This is the great work of consciousness, not the dramatic transformation that happens in a single moment, but the patient, persistent return to your chosen state of being. Let me give you a practical framework for this sacred work. Before your feet touch the floor each morning, before you check your phone, before you engage with the world's version of reality, spend time feeling yourself to be the person you've decided to become. What frequency are you bringing into this day? Are you carrying assumption of lack or abundance, struggle or ease? I have made it my practice for over 40 years to begin each day by asking myself, who am I choosing to be today? Not what am I going to do? Not what am I hoping will happen? But who am I choosing to be? Because who you are in consciousness determines what you experience in the world. Throughout your day, practice what I call embodied response. Notice when your actions, words, and choices align with your assumed identity, and when they contradict it. If you've assumed abundance, are you acting with generosity or scarcity? If you've assumed love, are you opening your heart or armoring it? I once knew a man who had assumed the identity of being a successful businessman. But every time he had an opportunity to invest in his business or take a calculated risk, he would retreat into fear-based thinking. He would say he believed in abundance, but his actions revealed his true assumptions that resources were scarce, that opportunities were rare, that he couldn't trust his own judgment. His external circumstances remained limited, not because the universe was withholding success from him, but because his actions were constantly contradicting his stated desires. He was like a man who claims to believe in his destination while consistently walking in the opposite direction. Before sleep each evening, review your day not for mistakes, but for alignment. Where did you successfully maintain your assumption? Where did you slip back into old patterns? Use this awareness, not for judgment, but for course correction. The practice of conscious creation is not about perfection. It's about persistence. Remember this profound truth. A change of feeling is a change of destiny. Every moment you sustain the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you're literally collapsing new quantum possibilities into your experience. This isn't metaphysical speculation. This is the most practical instruction I can give you. Dare to believe in the reality of your assumption, and watch the world play its part relative to its fulfillment. The world has no choice but to conform to your persistent assumption. Persistence doesn't mean force. It means natural, effortless return to your chosen state. Like a river that always flows toward the sea, your consciousness should naturally flow toward the assumption of your fulfilled desire. When doubt arises, and it will, don't fight it. Simply return to your assumption. When old patterns resurface, gently guide yourself back to your new identity. I want to share with you a story that illustrates this principle beautifully. Years ago, I met a young woman who had been told by doctors that she could never have children. She had been married for 5 years and had undergone countless medical procedures, all to no avail. When she came to my lectures, she was bitter and defeated, convinced that motherhood was impossible for her. I taught her to assume the feeling of being a mother, not hoping to become a mother, not trying to become a mother, but feeling herself to be a mother already. Every night, she would fall asleep imagining herself holding her baby, feeling the weight of the child in her arms, hearing the soft sounds of infant breathing. For months, nothing seemed to change in her external circumstances. The doctors still told her conception was impossible. Her husband began to lose hope, but she persisted in her assumption, returning again and again to the feeling of being a mother. The lag time between assumption and manifestation exists to test the persistence of your conviction. Will you maintain your assumption in the face of contradictory evidence? Will you continue to feel the reality of your wish fulfilled, even when the outer world hasn't yet caught up? This woman did exactly that. She held to her assumption with the tenacity of someone who knows that consciousness is the only reality, and eventually, against all medical predictions, she conceived. Today she has 3 children, all born after the doctors said conception was impossible. When external circumstances seem to contradict your assumption, remember that they are reflecting your previous assumptions, not your current ones. There is always a bridge of incidents that connects your assumption to its manifestation. You don't need to figure out how it will happen. You just need to maintain the assumption that it is happening. This brings me to one of the most important concepts I can share with you: living from the end. When you live from the end, you're not working toward your goal. You're working from the established fact of its fulfillment. You make decisions, speak words, and take actions from the consciousness of someone for whom the desire is already realized. This creates what quantum physicists call retroactive causation. The future state influences the present moment, drawing to you the experiences, opportunities, and circumstances that align with your assumed identity. It's as if your future self is reaching back through time, guiding your present self toward the inevitable fulfillment of your assumption. Here's something that will revolutionize your understanding. You're not trying to get somewhere. You're recognizing that you're already there. The version of you living your desired life already exists in the quantum field. Your job is to assume their identity so completely that you literally become them. I learned this through my own experience of coming to America. When I was still in Barbados, I began to assume the feeling of being in New York. I didn't know how I would get there, didn't have the money for passage, didn't have connections or opportunities. But I felt myself to be there so completely that it became more real to me than my physical surroundings in Barbados. Every night, I would fall asleep imagining myself walking the streets of New York, feeling the energy of the city, seeing myself as part of that vibrant, creative community. I lived in that assumption so completely that when the opportunity finally came to travel to America, it felt like a natural inevitability rather than a stroke of luck. This is the power of assumption. It doesn't just attract circumstances, it creates them. When you assume something to be true with enough conviction and persistence, the entire universe conspires to make it so. Doors open, people appear, opportunities arise, all in perfect timing to support the manifestation of your assumption. But most people give up too soon. They assume for a while, don't see immediate results, and return to their old patterns. They don't understand that the lag time between assumption and manifestation is not punishment, it's preparation. The universe is reorganizing itself around your new assumption, and that reorganization takes time. In the next 24 hours, I want you to do one thing that belongs entirely to the version of you living your desired reality. Not a half-hearted gesture, not a tentative step, but a full assumption of that identity in one specific action, choice, or internal shift. It doesn't need to be dramatic, it just needs to be authentic. When you do this, you'll feel something profound happen within you. You'll sense the quantum field responding to your new signal. You'll experience what I call the thrill of answered prayer, that moment when you feel the creative principle stirring in response to your assumption. Let me tell you about a man who attended one of my lectures in New York. He was unemployed and had been looking for work for months without success. After hearing me speak about assumption, he decided to assume the feeling of being employed in his ideal job. The next morning, instead of putting on his usual casual clothes to go job hunting, he dressed as if he were already employed in the position he desired. He put on his best suit, tied his tie with care, and looked at himself in the mirror, not as an unemployed man hoping for work, but as a successful professional preparing for another day at his fulfilling job. That simple act of dressing from his assumed identity shifted something within him. He carried himself differently, spoke differently, even thought differently. Within a week, he received a call for an interview at a company he had never even applied to. A colleague had recommended him for a position that matched his desired role perfectly. The interview went beautifully because he wasn't trying to convince them to hire him. He was already convinced that he belonged there. This is the power of assumption in action. When you truly feel yourself to be something, you automatically act from that consciousness, and the world responds to the authenticity of your conviction. And in that moment, you'll understand what I've been trying to tell you. You are not at the mercy of external circumstances. You are the operant power in your world. Your imagination, directed by assumption and sustained by feeling, is the creative force that shapes every detail of your experience. I want to share something that happened to me just last year. I was preparing for a series of lectures on the West Coast, and I began to imagine the audiences as particularly receptive and engaged. I didn't hope they would be receptive. I assumed they would be. I felt the energy of connection, the joy of sharing truth with eager minds, the satisfaction of seeing understanding dawn in their faces. When I arrived for the first lecture, I found the largest, most enthusiastic audience I had ever addressed. People had traveled from hundreds of miles away to attend. The connection was immediate and profound, exactly as I had imagined it would be. But here's the important point. I didn't create that audience through wishful thinking. I collapsed that already existing possibility into my experience, through the power of assumption. The mystics have always known that imagination is the divine creative faculty. When the Bible speaks of God creating the world through His Word, it's describing the same process I'm teaching you. The power of consciousness to speak reality into existence. You are made in the image of this creative power, which means you too can speak your world into existence through the creative word of assumption. But there's a difference between casual daydreaming and the kind of imaginative creation I'm describing. Casual daydreaming is passive. You drift along with whatever images arise. Creative imagination is active. You deliberately direct your consciousness toward a specific end and sustain that direction until it hardens into fact. The Bible tells us that God saw everything He had made, and behold, it was very good. This seeing is not passive observation, it's creative recognition. When you see your desired reality with the eyes of imagination, when you recognize it as already accomplished, when you feel its goodness as a present fact, you are using the same creative power that brought worlds into existence. I often tell my students that the Bible is not a historical document. It's a psychological drama that plays out in the consciousness of every individual. Abraham represents the awakening of faith. Moses represents the law-giving aspect of consciousness. And Jesus represents the perfect assumption of divine identity. These are not people who lived thousands of years ago. They are states of consciousness that you can experience right now. When Jesus said, "Before Abraham was, I am," he was expressing the eternal now of consciousness. Your desired reality doesn't exist in some distant future. It exists right now in the eternal present of imagination. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are accessing that eternal now, collapsing the apparent distance between desire and fulfillment. I remember a woman who came to me years ago, desperate to reconcile with her estranged husband. They had been separated for over a year, and he had filed for divorce. The lawyers were involved, the papers were drawn up, and everyone told her to accept that the marriage was over. But I taught her to assume the feeling of reconciliation. She began to sleep each night imagining her husband beside her, feeling his presence, his love, his commitment to their marriage. She would wake up and for a moment feel genuinely surprised to find herself alone. So real had her imaginative experience become. Her friends thought she was delusional. Her family urged her to face reality. But she held to her assumption, with the persistence of someone who understands that consciousness is reality, and that what we call physical reality is simply consciousness crystallized into form. It took 6 months, but gradually, her husband began to soften. He started calling, then visiting, then spending the night. The divorce papers were never filed, and today, 15 years later, they have one of the strongest marriages I know. She didn't manipulate him or coerce him. She simply assumed the feeling of their love so completely that it became the dominant reality in both their lives. This is what I mean when I say that assumption, if persisted in, will harden into fact. The facts of your current experience are simply the hardened assumptions of your past consciousness. Change your assumptions, persist in them, and you will change your facts. But here's what most people don't understand. The period between assumption and manifestation is not dead time. It's the most creative period of your life. During this time, the universe is reorganizing itself around your new assumption, creating the bridge of incidents that will bring your desire into manifestation. Your job during this period is not to figure out how it will happen. Your job is to maintain the assumption that it is happening. Every time you slip back into doubt, every time you return to the old story, you're essentially voting for your old reality. But every time you return to your assumption, you're voting for your new reality. Democracy is not just a political system. It's a cosmic principle. The universe is constantly taking a vote on what reality you want to experience. And every thought, every feeling, every assumption is a vote. The reality that gets the most votes wins. This is why persistence is so important. Not because you're forcing something to happen, but because you're consistently voting for what you want to experience. I've seen people transform their entire lives through this understanding. I've watched the sick become healthy, the poor become wealthy, the lonely find love, all through the simple but profound practice of assuming the feeling of their wish fulfilled and persisting in that assumption until it hardened into fact. The quantum field that modern physics describes is the same field that the mystics have always called the mind of God. It's the responsive, creative medium in which all possibilities exist simultaneously, waiting for consciousness to select which ones to experience. You are not separate from this field. You are an individualized point of consciousness within it, with the power to collapse any possibility into your experience. This is why I say that man is God in action, not because you are greater than the creative principle, but because you are the creative principle, individualized. The same power that creates galaxies and governs the movement of planets is the power that beats your heart and thinks your thoughts. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are using this cosmic creative power in its most practical application. But power without wisdom can be dangerous. This is why I emphasize the importance of assuming only what you truly desire, only what would bring joy and fulfillment, not just to you, but to all concerned. The creative power is impartial. It will manifest whatever you consistently assume, regardless of whether it's beneficial or harmful. I once knew a man who was so focused on getting revenge against someone who had wronged him, that he spent months assuming the feeling of his enemy's downfall. His assumption was so persistent and emotionally charged that it eventually manifested. His enemy did indeed experience a series of failures and setbacks. But the man who had assumed this revenge found no satisfaction in it. In fact, he felt empty and remorseful, realizing that his creative power could have been used to build something beautiful instead of tearing something down. This taught me an important lesson about the responsibility that comes with creative power. When you understand that your assumptions shape reality, you must also accept responsibility for the kind of reality you're creating. Are you using your creative power to build a world of love, abundance, and joy? Or are you unconsciously creating a world of fear, scarcity, and limitation? The choice is always yours, and it's being made in every moment through the assumptions you hold and the feelings you entertain. This is why self-observation is so crucial to this work. You must become aware of your habitual patterns of thought and feeling, because these patterns are literally sculpting your experience of reality. Most people are unconscious creators, assuming by default, rather than by design. They inherit their assumptions from their parents, their culture, their past experiences, and then wonder why their life feels predetermined. But you have the power to break free from inherited limitations and create consciously according to your highest vision of what's possible. You must assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. This is not about visualizing, it's about feeling. You must feel yourself to be the person you want to become so completely that it becomes more real to you than your current circumstances. I remember when I was first learning these principles, I struggled with the concept of feeling. I would try to visualize what I wanted, but the images seemed flat and lifeless. It wasn't until I learned to feel my way into my desires that they began to manifest with consistency. For example, when I wanted to experience financial abundance, I didn't just visualize money in my bank account. I felt the security that comes with financial freedom, the ease of making purchases without anxiety, the joy of being able to help others generously. I felt the weight of money in my pocket, the satisfaction of paying bills with gratitude rather than fear. When you reach this level of assumption, where your desired state feels more real than your current circumstances, manifestation becomes inevitable. The quantum field cannot resist a persistent, feeling-full assumption. It must collapse into form, that which you've assumed to be true. This is not faith in the religious sense. This is faith in the scientific sense. It's not blind belief. It's informed confidence based on understanding the laws of consciousness. When you understand that consciousness is the only reality and that the physical world is simply consciousness made visible, then assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled becomes as natural as breathing. But most people approach manifestation with a beggar's consciousness. They come to the universe with their hat in their hand, hoping for a few scraps of good fortune. They pray with desperation rather than assumption. They visualize with yearning rather than acceptance. They affirm with hope rather than conviction. This beggar's consciousness actually repels what you want, because it's based on the assumption that you don't have it. How can you attract abundance while assuming scarcity? How can you manifest love while assuming unworthiness? How can you create success while assuming failure? The consciousness of the fulfilled desire is entirely different. It's not hoping or wanting or needing, it's simply being. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you're not asking for something, you're accepting something that already exists. You're not hoping it will happen, you're recognizing that it has happened. This shift from hoping to accepting, from wanting to being, is the most important transformation you can make in your approach to manifestation. It's the difference between begging and commanding, between asking and decreeing, between trying and knowing. You are not the same person who began listening to these words. Something has shifted in your consciousness. A new possibility has been awakened. You are carrying within you right now the seed of your transformed life. That seed doesn't need to be planted. It's already growing. It doesn't need to be watered. It's already being nourished by the creative power of your assumption. The extraordinary version of you, the one living in that expanded, joyful, abundant reality, is not a distant possibility. It is a present fact waiting for your assumption to make it manifest. The lag time between assumption and manifestation is not punishment. It's the natural rhythm of creation, the time it takes for consciousness to crystallize into form. Your journey to mastery begins now, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances align, but now, because the quantum field is listening to your assumption in this very moment. And it's ready to mirror back to you the reality you're brave enough to claim as already yours. Remember, my friend, you are at this very moment, drawing into your world that which you are now conscious of being. Make your assumption consciously, deliberately, persistently, and watch as the quantum field rearranges itself to match the magnificent reality you've dared to assume as true. The choice is always yours. Will you continue assuming the old story, or will you dare to assume the magnificent truth of who you really are and what's actually possible for you? The power is within you. It has always been within you. Now you know how to use it. Now you know that your imagination is not just a faculty for entertainment. It's the divine creative power by which worlds are made and unmade, by which your personal world is constantly being shaped and reshaped according to your dominant assumptions. Go forth and assume boldly, my friend. Assume the best. Assume the highest. Assume the most magnificent version of your life that you can conceive. And then persist in that assumption with the patience of eternity and the confidence of one who knows that consciousness is the only reality and that the creative power of the universe is working through you to bring your assumption into manifestation. The quantum field is waiting for your command. What reality will you choose to collapse into experience? The answer to that question will determine the story of your life. Choose well, assume boldly, and prepare to be amazed by the creative power that lies within your own divine imagination. This is the promise. This is the possibility. This is the power that is yours to claim. All of creation is waiting for you to recognize who you truly are. Not a victim of circumstances, but the creator of your experience. Not a beggar hoping for scraps, but a sovereign being capable of assuming any reality you dare to claim as true. The time for limitation is over. The time for assumption is now. Step into your power, assume your greatness, and watch as the universe conspires to make your assumption reality.
Good evening, my dear friends. Tonight I'm going to tell you something that will either liberate you completely or challenge everything you've been taught to believe about reality. The facts are lying to you. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. What you see before you at this very moment, the empty bank account, the rejection letter, the closed door, the absence of what you desire, is not truth. It's a photograph. A snapshot of a moment that has already passed. An echo of old thoughts, yesterday's beliefs, assumptions you made weeks, months, or years ago that have finally hardened into visible form. And you've been treating this photograph as if it were your living, breathing reality. You look at your bank statement and say, I am poor. You look at your body and say, I am sick. You look at your circumstances and say, this is my life. But that's like looking at last year's calendar and calling it today. The greatest error you can make, the error that keeps you trapped in repetitive cycles of the same unwanted experiences, is to look at current facts and call them truth. The truth is not what stands before your eyes. The truth is what you dare to assume in the quiet of your imagination. Tonight, I'm going to show you why the facts must be ignored, how to keep assuming despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, and why your persistent assumption is the only creative force in your life. This is not positive thinking. This is not denial. This is not fantasy. This is the mechanics of creation itself. Let me explain something fundamental about how reality works. something that, once you grasp it, will change how you relate to every circumstance in your life. Your outer world is always one step behind your inner world. Always. By the time you can see something, touch it, measure it, experience it in the three-dimensional world, it has already been set in motion by an earlier state of consciousness. Think about it. The tree you see today began as a seed planted months or years ago. The wealth you see in someone's life began as an assumption of abundance. They held long before the money appeared. The love you witnessed between two people began as a feeling they harbored in their hearts before they ever met. The visible is always the effect of the invisible, never the cause. This means that whatever displeases you right now, whatever fact is screaming for your attention, demanding your emotional reaction, insisting on its reality, is not current. It's old news. It's the materialization of who you were, what you believed, what you assumed to be true at some point in the past. Your present circumstances are telling you who you were, not who you are, not who you're becoming, not who you've decided to be in consciousness. They are echoes, delayed responses, fragments of an old script you've already outgrown. And here's the critical point. If you allow yourself to react to these old facts as if they define your present and future, you will perpetuate them. When you look at the empty bank account and feel poor, you're not responding to present reality. You're creating future poverty. When you look at your diagnosis and feel sick, you're not acknowledging current truth. You're assuming continued illness. When you look at the rejection and feel unwanted, you're not processing past pain, you're seeding future rejection. The moment you emotionally engage with an unwanted fact, you give it permission to repeat itself. This is why so many people experience the same problems over and over. They think they're reacting to reality, but they're actually creating it, perpetually manifesting the very things they're reacting against. So what's the solution? Ignore the facts. Not because they're not there. Not because you're pretending they don't exist. But because they're already outdated the moment they appear, and giving them your emotional energy only ensures they'll appear again tomorrow. I want you to understand something deeply. Present conditions are not a measure of your worth, your potential, or your destiny. They are simply a reflection of what you once believed, once felt, once assumed about yourself and the world. Every circumstance you see right now is the result of old mental patterns, thoughts that have already done their work. It's the past wearing the costume of the present. Just like the shadow on the ground lags behind the person casting it, your current reality lags behind your inner state. You take a step forward, and a moment later your shadow follows. You shift your consciousness, and a moment later, days, weeks, sometimes months later, your circumstances follow. But if you keep looking at the shadow to determine where you're standing, you'll be perpetually confused. The shadow is not telling you where you are now. It's showing you where you were a moment ago. Your circumstances are the same. They're showing you where you stood in consciousness at some point in the past. So when you look at your life and see lack, limitation, struggle, or pain, don't panic. Don't despair. Don't accept it as your permanent reality. Recognize it for what it is, an old photograph that no longer represents your living truth. The danger comes when you forget this and begin to emotionally engage with what you dislike. The moment you give your current circumstances your attention, your fear, your frustration, your worry, you begin planting the seeds to experience more of the same. You're taking that old photograph and saying, yes, this is who I am, this is my reality, this is what I believe about myself. And consciousness, which is always faithful to your assumptions, says very well, if this is what you claim as yours, I will create more of it. The wise creator does not take present circumstances as an instruction for how to feel. They know that feelings are the blueprint of tomorrow, so they refuse to let the current picture dictate their mood, their thoughts, or their assumptions about themselves. Instead, they withdraw their focus from the unwanted and place it firmly on the unseen vision they have chosen. They treat the present like a letter that was mailed weeks ago. It has already been written. They know that if they want a different letter tomorrow, they must write something new today in consciousness. Here's a truth that most people never grasp. Everything begins in the unseen. Before any event unfolds, before any change is witnessed, before any dream becomes tangible, It exists in the quiet realm of thought, feeling, and assumption. The invisible always comes first. Your mind is the soil. Every assumption you hold is a seed planted deep within it. Whether you plant seeds of fear or seeds of faith, they will take root. Whether you nurture visions of lack or visions of abundance, they will grow. Whether you water thoughts of limitation or thoughts of possibility, they will multiply. The world you walk through is nothing more than the harvest of what you have been growing inside. Most people make the mistake of judging life only by what they can see. They forget that what is visible is already the end of a process, not the beginning. The tree is not born when you notice it. It began long ago as a seed beneath the surface, invisible, silent, yet very much alive and growing. Likewise, the success, the love, the health, the wealth you desire will not appear out of nowhere, surprising you with its sudden existence. It is born the moment you assume it is already yours. The moment you feel the reality of it in your inner world, the seed is planted. And once that seed is in the ground, it doesn't need your permission to grow. It doesn't need your understanding of how. It doesn't need your constant supervision. It needs your faith, your persistent assumption, your refusal to dig it up every day to check if it's growing. This is why you must be intentional with the seeds you plant. Every thought charged with emotion, every assumption you accept as truth is dropped into the fertile soil of your subconscious. And once it's planted, it grows. Whether you notice it or not, whether you remember planting it or not, whether you believe in it or not, if you spend your days replaying fears, expecting disappointment, believing in limitations, you are watering weeds. These weeds do not ask your permission to grow. They thrive in the attention you give them. They multiply in the emotional energy you feed them. Before you know it, your entire garden is overrun with the very things you didn't want. But you have the choice to plant something different. You can choose to assume that your desire is already a reality. You can choose to hold that assumption as if it were sacred, tending to it daily with your thoughts and feelings. When doubt appears, and it will appear, you refuse to feed it. You don't argue with it. You don't fight it. You simply withdraw your attention from it and return to your chosen assumption. When appearances contradict your vision, and they will contradict it for a time, you remind yourself that they are simply the remnants of old seeds, and you let them pass without emotional reaction. It is not your job to dig up the seed every day to see if it's growing. In fact, doing so only delays the process. It shows doubt, it shows lack of faith, and consciousness responds to your doubt by slowing the manifestation. Your task is to water the seed with belief, to keep the soil warm with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to protect it from the weeds of fear and frustration, and then to wait, not anxiously, not desperately, but with the calm knowing that a seed once planted in good soil and given proper care must grow. The harvest will come in its own time. You cannot rush the unfolding any more than you can force a flower to bloom before it is ready. But you can trust the process. You can remain faithful to your assumption. You can refuse to let visible facts dictate your inner state. When you truly grasp this, when you really understand that the invisible comes first and the visible must follow, you stop living as a victim of circumstances. You stop being fooled by the outer world because you know it's only showing you yesterday's seeds. You become a conscious gardener, deliberately planting only what you wish to harvest. Now, let me tell you the most important practice you can ever learn. Living from the end, the moment you decide what you want, your task is not to wait for proof. It is not to figure out how it will happen. It is not to scan the horizon for signs that it's coming. Your task is to live from the end, as if the desire were already fulfilled, not as if it will be fulfilled someday, not hoping it might be fulfilled, not acting like it's fulfilled while secretly doubting. Living from the end means occupying the state of consciousness of the person who already has what you desire. This is where most people fail. They want the thing, but they continue to think from the state of not having it. They want wealth, but they worry about bills. They want love, but they feel lonely. They want health, but they identify as sick. They want success, but they make decisions from the consciousness of failure. You cannot think from poverty and manifest wealth. You cannot think from loneliness and manifest love. You cannot think from failure and manifest success. The state you occupy determines what you create. So if you want to experience something different, you must first become someone different in consciousness. Ask yourself, if I already had my desire, how would I think? Would the person who is already wealthy worry about this bill? No, they'd handle it calmly, knowing more money is always flowing. Would the person who is deeply loved feel desperate for attention? No, they'd feel secure, cherished, content. Would the person who is successful doubt their next move? No, they'd decide confidently, knowing they have the ability to succeed. You must think from that consciousness. Now, today, before any evidence appears, this is not about pretending or forcing yourself to believe through sheer willpower. It's about genuinely entering into a state of being where you naturally feel the truth of your assumption. How do you do this? You ask yourself, if I already had it, how would I walk? How would I speak to others? How would I spend my time? How would I treat myself? And then you live according to those answers, even if your senses try to convince you otherwise. At first, this will feel strange. Your outer reality will still carry the residue of the old state. The bank account will still show the same number. The relationship status will still be the same. The body will still show the same symptoms. But do not be discouraged. Outer conditions are slow to catch up. They are the shadow, not the substance. The substance is the inner state you hold unwaveringly. Your mind is the director. The world is the stage. The actors, the props, the scenes, all of it responds to the script you're writing in consciousness. The moment you accept the role inwardly, the moment you genuinely occupy the state of having your desire, the scene begins to change outwardly. Not instantly, not magically, but inevitably. Do not wait for circumstances to give you permission to feel successful, happy, loved, or abundant. This is the trap. Most people wait for the money before they feel wealthy. They wait for the person before they feel loved. They wait for the success before they feel confident. But this is backwards. You must feel it first. The feeling is the cause. The circumstance is the effect. When you live from that inner certainty, when you walk through your day as the person who already has what they desire, the world will mirror it back to you. Opportunities will arise that you couldn't have predicted. People will respond to you differently. Events will arrange themselves in your favor, not because you forced them, not because you manipulated them, but because you aligned with the version of you who already lives in that reality. The key is persistence. You cannot step into the role for an hour during meditation and then return to doubt for the rest of the day. You must hold the state as naturally as you hold your own name. Carry it in your posture, your words, your inner dialogue, your decisions, your reactions. If you fall into old patterns, and you will at first gently return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Don't judge yourself, don't panic. Just return. Again and again and again. When you assume as if it's done, you collapse the gap between desire and experience. You are no longer someone trying to get there. You are someone who is already there in consciousness. And consciousness being the only reality, you are already there in the only place that matters. The three-dimensional world is simply catching up to where you already stand. The evidence will appear, but only after you've stopped looking for it and started living from it. There will always be voices, some from others, some from within, that try to tell you what is possible and what is not. They will measure your potential by your current situation, by your past failures, by statistics, by probability, by their own limited vision. If you allow these voices to dictate your thinking, you'll find yourself trapped in the same reality they believe in. The truth is, those outer opinions and visible circumstances are powerless unless you give them power through your attention and acceptance. The outer voice often comes disguised as common sense, practical advice, or just being realistic. Your friends will say, be reasonable, look at the facts. You don't have the money, the connections, the qualifications. Your family will say, we just don't want you to get your hopes up. We're trying to protect you. Society will say people like you don't get those kinds of opportunities. But what they're really doing is binding you to the known and the visible, keeping you from stepping into the unseen where your desire is already alive. If you want to create something new, you must learn to silence these outer voices, not by arguing with them, not by trying to convince them, not by defending your vision. You silence them by withdrawing your mental and emotional energy from their words. Let them speak. Let them doubt. Let them tell you it's impossible. And then in the quiet of your own consciousness, return to your assumption. Your senses too will try to persuade you. They are perhaps even more convincing than other people's voices. They will present you with facts, numbers, images that seem immovable. They will whisper, look, nothing has changed. This is your reality. Wake up. But your senses are reporters of the past, not prophets of the future. They can only confirm what has already been created through your previous states of mind. If what you see and hear contradicts your desire, remind yourself that it is only the fading echo of old beliefs, old assumptions, old states. It's yesterday's news being delivered today. And you don't base your future on yesterday's news. This is why inner discipline is so important. You must become the guardian of your own mind. You must protect your assumption like a precious seed. When doubt tries to speak, you gently turn your attention back to the vision you've chosen. When fear presents its case, and it will present compelling evidence, you refuse to sit in its courtroom. When people insist that you are foolish for believing in what they cannot see, you silently bless them and return to your inner knowing. The power to manifest is not found in convincing the world to support your dream. It is found in convincing yourself so completely that the world has no choice but to rearrange itself accordingly. Every moment you allow yourself to be swayed by the outer world, you water the seeds of doubt. But every moment you hold fast to your chosen assumption, you strengthen the roots of your new reality. There will be times when the silence feels lonely, when it seems easier to agree with the loudest voice, when it seems wiser to surrender to the facts. But remember, every great change begins in solitude, in the quiet place where belief is nurtured without interference. Moses went to the mountain alone. Jesus went to the wilderness alone. Every visionary, every creator, every person who has ever manifested something that others said was impossible, they all had to spend time alone with their vision, protecting it from the voices of doubt. So guard that place. Protect it. Keep it free from the weeds of doubt and fear. Ignore the doubters. Ignore the circumstances. Ignore even the reports of your own senses if they disagree with your desire. The only voice that matters is the one within you that says it is done. Let me bring this all together now. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are not subject to facts. You are not powerless before the world. You are the creator of your experience through the power of assumption. Every condition in your life, wanted or unwanted, exists because of an assumption you held. The unwanted conditions exist because you unconsciously assumed them. You reacted to old facts. You believed what you saw. You accepted limitations as truth. But the wanted conditions, the ones you're now claiming, will exist because you consciously assume them. You ignore current facts. You believe in the unseen. You accept your desire as already done. Your role is not to chase, beg, manipulate or plead. Your role is to choose, believe, and remain. Choose the state you wish to occupy. Believe it is already yours in consciousness. Remain faithful to that belief, regardless of what appears. The inner must be honored before the outer can reflect it. And the moment you live from your chosen state, the moment you truly occupy it in consciousness, the rest becomes inevitable. The world has no choice but to catch up. Tonight I want you to make a decision. Look at the most unwanted fact in your life right now. The one that seems most solid, most real, most unchangeable. The empty bank account, the rejection, the closed door, whatever it is, and recognize it for what it truly is. An old photograph. Yesterday's assumption made visible. It is not your current truth. It is not your destiny. It is not unchangeable. It is simply the materialization of who you were in consciousness at some point in the past. And now you are going to assume something different. Choose what you want instead. Decide on your desired end. And then, starting tonight, ignore the old fact completely. Don't fight it. Don't hate it. Don't fear it. Just stop giving it your emotional energy. Instead, assume your desire is already fulfilled. Feel what it feels like to have it. Live from that state. When the old fact tries to speak, when it waves its hands and demands your attention, smile at it gently and return to your assumption. You are old news. I have chosen a new reality, and I will persist in that reality until you fade away and it takes your place. Do this for 30 days, not half-heartedly. Fully committed. 30 days of ignoring facts and keeping your assumption. 30 days of living from the end regardless of what your senses report. 30 days of persisting through every contradiction. And watch what happens. Watch as the old facts begin to weaken. Watch as new circumstances start to form. Watch as the world slowly, then suddenly, conforms to your persistent assumption. This is your power. This is the law. This is how you create. I end with this. If you truly ignore the facts and keep assuming, if you remain faithful to your chosen state despite all evidence to the contrary, your assumption will harden into fact. Not because you deserve it, not because you earned it, not because you got lucky, but because this is law. Consciousness creates circumstances. Assumptions become facts. The inner always externalizes. Stay loyal to your vision. Ignore what contradicts it. And trust that what you have claimed within is already growing in the invisible, preparing to break through into the visible. The world will catch up. It always does. So ignore the facts, keep assuming. Thank you, and good evening. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of consciousness. Remember, you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul is ready for this truth. Take these teachings and let them transform not just your mind, but your entire reality. Until we meet again in consciousness, keep assuming your greatness and living from the end of your desires. This is Best of Lectures, and I'll see you in the next video.